Welcome to Grit Inside Manhattan Beach Studios, brought to you by Skyball. I'm Victoria Dennis alongside Meg Burgdorf. Joining us today is world-renowned mental skills coach and author, Dr. J.
There it is. Good job.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks
and welcome
for
to Grit. We're really excited to talk about, I know you have 2 books out with us today, but first let's kind of talk about the misconceptions of sports psychology.
Okay, misconceptions of sports psychology is that it is to fix what's broken. That is a small part and a necessary part. The way that I see it, mental skills training in sports psychology is to create mental processes that allow an athlete's physical abilities to take over. So it's a series of processes and mechanisms that will trigger automatic physical behaviors. So if there's a problem, I help you fix it, but primarily I'm fine-tuning the mind and the brain to trigger physical action.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer to what everyone thinks, hey, it's broke, let's fix it. Right. So what does that actually mean to an athlete, let's say a junior athlete, a collegiate athlete stepping out there, first time hearing all about sports psych for them and going, I don't know what it is. Is it like therapy? What is the relationship and how does that kick off?
The like therapy is a great little add-on to that. As an example, I was sitting with a mom the other day at a wedding, and she said, oh, sports psychology, my child doesn't need sports psychology. He's going off to play baseball in the Ivy Leagues. And I kind of smile and nod like, okay, great for him. But it's provides for a junior athlete or youth or college, it provides a structure of a mindset to fortify the athlete against the stresses of school and life and whatever, to be able to perform at the best of their physical ability consistently. So it eliminates distractions, it creates processes that will allow them to do their best more often. And how it ties into mental health, people don't realize that if you have a sports psychology problem, you've got a mental health problem probably. Anxiety is anxiety, fear is fear, depression is depression. A lot of especially juniors and younger players are scared, are having their identity wrapped up in performance. Their parents unwittingly often, but don't help with only praising great outcomes. And so for those kids, the younger kids, we build a developmental framework that they then apply as they get better physically to be able to handle the stressors that come their way.
And the stressors are happening younger now than they were 10, 20 years ago. And myself coaching youth athletes, I'm in the gym with middle school kids, 6th, 7th, 8th, and we know 6th grade is very different than 8th grade, and 7th grade you're floating around there too, but how young should parents be aware of maybe introducing their children to?
Great question. I find it to work this way. A younger kid doesn't have the ability to sort of, they're not abstract enough to understand the concepts that I teach, but their parents certainly are. So if a kid's like 7, 8, 9, 10, they come in with their parents and I teach their parents the same stuff. And that way the parents in the car rides home, at practice, at games, know the right things to do to help that kid develop. But for the most part, those kids are too young. But when they start getting into high school, I would say, I think it's about 12 or 13 where you start to be able to think a little more abstractly, where they start introducing algebra in school, right? Because we can understand, well, some people, not me, some people can understand letters in math, it's like a different thing. And so around that age, I start to work individually with the kids, still with the parents, but it's sort of a teeter-totter kind of thing of like, it's really parent-centric, then it starts getting kid-centric with the parent, then getting peripheral stuff.
And that's more when they are in high school?
Yeah, or mature or ready, really.
Everyone's different.
Yeah, for sure. But sometimes people will call me and they'll say, hey, like I just had one, my kid's 7. She's a gymnast. But like already like, pulling out of going to school kind of level of gymnast, and like homeschools and does gymnastics all day. She was 7 and she wasn't able to go backwards anymore. And so I couldn't really help her conceptualize a lot of that. I helped her a little bit, but I really taught the parents what to do. And so a couple days later, the mom sent me a video of the girl going backwards on the balance beam. So it all worked out, but it's sort of like a supplemental thing for younger. I think that was answering your question. And as they get older, they get more able to do it on their own.
And kids, again, nowadays are hyper specialized at 7, at 8, even at 6, younger. In my opinion, my humble opinion, I think that kids should be doing a realm of things like sports and arts. And if you're going to do sports, play baseball and soccer and volleyball and track and football. See what you like and take from others and apply to what you see yourself doing. Like I myself, I danced for 6 years. I played soccer for 7 years. And then high school, I was like, oh, okay, volleyball is what I want to do, even though I did varsity track freshman and sophomore year, because like all my girlfriends were doing it and it was fun. But, you know, I think parents now, especially in like some specific communities, are like, my kid's going to the Olympics. And it's like, I don't think so, but Charlie is pretty good at what he's doing. I mean, what's your opinion on exposing kids to multiple?
I think it's great that they play multiple sports as long as they can. It's almost impossible in high school because of the way seasons overlap and how coaches get proprietary about their sport and their deal. The unfortunate part of that is, as good as it is for kids to develop that way, it's such a rat race. And the parents are the ones signing them up for stuff, you know? Mm-hmm. So the parents go, well, my kid's got to be as good as that kid, and they've got to play at this club or do this thing. And they get really forced into this specialized thing. Like my kid was a club volleyball player and played in high school and school too, but there wasn't, to stay on top of that, there was no leeway to do anything else. So it would be great if all kids could experience multiple sports, but it's the external system doesn't let them too much anymore. Mm-hmm. which I think is problematic, but it's kind of the nature of the beast at this point.
It's really interesting. I wonder if there's an example that you can share to give to parents out there. Let's say maybe even an example, the kid gets in the car after a practice or after a match. What is a simple guiding tool that you would suggest to?
This is what I would do with my kid. Do you want to talk about it first? Yay or nay, right? And usually it was a no. Because if it's great, everybody wants to talk, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. And what I would find is, this is the advice for parents. If you say, do you want to talk about it? No. That it will start to bubble up in about 5 or 6 minutes. You know, when you're at the drive-through line.
Wait.
It'll come when they're ready. But when they are ready, I think it's great to ask permission to give advice. And some parents sometimes get a little bristly with, why would I have to ask my kid permission? Well, because they feel then important and heard. Mm-hmm. So it's not about your ego. It's about communicating with the kid. So, hey, I would do this too. I go, hey, do you want what I think? No. Okay. And then you bite your tongue and you don't give it. Or yes. And then I would even go further. Do you want dad or do you want coach? And dad, okay, well, you did great. You know, you win some, you lose some. Or if she said coach, I would go, well, it seemed like you had a bad attitude, whatever it was, you know. So to kind of go back to the beginning of that, ask permission and avoid the parental righting reflex, which is we know everything, so let us tell you how it is. Just let them talk, give them a platform. Hey, what do you think happened out there? And even if they're wrong, you getting them to say words develops your relationships, it develops their ability to process, and things wind up where you would want them anyway.
And we're kind of talking about athletes are demonstrating an elite level of performance at any age or any stage. But you have parents hanging out, watching kids, and parent to parent. So is there any advice you'd give to parents when the topics of sports performance, mental skills, anything comes up, even to share or not share, or to educate softly the parent next to them on this whole area?
I think that the best advice would be to just not say anything about your kid's performance in a group of people, other kids' performance in a group of people, if that's what you're asking. Mm-hmm. I think the best advice is to smile and nod, because everybody's ego is involved. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I went through the club thing as a parent, and there's a little pack of people here and a little pack of people here, and they're all sort of against each other. And I can remember at a tryout, my kid went to a new club, and she was playing right side, and she was getting up and crushing balls. And this mom sidled up to me, super friendly, like, "Oh, is that your kid? Where's she from? Oh, she's so good." Turns out she was the mom of the other right side. And she was just getting intel, and she's just how this club folks are. So it's better just to smile and nod, like I said, and stay detached as much as possible. And you worry about your kid's performance, and nothing else.
And I know you talked and used the word process a lot.
Mhm.
So evolving the elite youth athlete into the juniors and that
Mhm.
getting recruited stage and then into college. Let's talk a little bit about what that process grows into.
Okay. Um, the setting that framework where we haven't really talked about this, but I do run everything that I teach through the lens of mindfulness about being present and sort of non-judgmental. So hopefully an athlete has built mental skills and they're present and not judgmental. And as they develop through situations, or they're being recruited, or they're uh, facing adversity in those settings, they aren't reactionary. They're able to take things in, they're able to stay in whatever the thing is and not be overly emotional, not be whatever else. And so they, like I mentioned before, they have this firm foundation that will take them through the ups and downs of all of that stress, all of the college visits, all of the dads going, "Did you email the coach?" All of that stuff. I think that answer kind of what you're asking.
Yeah, and what is the process look like for engaging in that? Because many people are like, "Oh, if I call up Dr. J, like, what's it gonna look like? What do I need to have prepared? What does maybe even the first session look like at that
Gotcha.
age and stage?"
Um, this is what it looks like. It's hard to say. You come in and you go, "Hey," while I said before, I don't focus on problems. The majority of people that call me are coming in because they perceive a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Most parents aren't going, or pros or anybody going, "Hey, everything's going great. Let me like embellish." They're going, "Hey, there's a problem." So it's a bit of a needs assessment. And there's these sports psychology fundamentals like self-talk and focus and mental toughness. And you sort of see where they're at on those things, see where the parents at on those things, and create a plan of, okay, we need to build this or build that. I sort of think of it like a circle. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's self-talk here and mindfulness here, and it's like, which one do we need to pull out and focus on? Okay, we got that tuned up, we put it back, and they're all interconnected. So to answer the question, it starts with, well, what does this person need?
Mm-hmm.
And then we apply skills that are missing. And then the trick of that is to hand them a packet of information in a way that they can accept it.
Mm-hmm.
So for a 7-year-old, that's one way. For a 17-year-old, it's a different way. For a parent, it's a very different way too. So you kind of have to kind of negotiate that. But we come in and people come in and tell me what's going on, and I offer them some solutions. I kind of think of it like I'm a waiter showing you a menu,
Mm-hmm.
giving you I know this one's really good, you should try it, and then I let them pick.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just sort of kick that can down the road.
And it's the same as being a athletic coach in beach volleyball with passing, setting, hitting, all those skills. So it's just finding those.
For sure.
It's a really interesting way to look at it for a parent who's new at approaching this.
Yeah. I get a lot of eye rolls when I mention mindfulness,
Yeah.
which I did. The reason I ever got into mindfulness, I was a clinical director of a drug and alcohol rehab.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to interview for that job, it was going great. I was going to get the job. I was like, yes. And at the end, they go, "Hey, how do you feel about mindfulness?" And I was like, "I don't know anything about it, but I'm on board." And then I was like, "Oh no, like, what is this? It's going to be a bunch of hippies. We got to sing Kumbaya or something."
Mm-hmm.
And over the 3 years I was there, I really dug into it, realizing that it comes out of Buddhism. And while I'm not a Buddhist, I feel like a lot of the Buddhist wisdom. So I can't even remember what the question was now.
Me either, but basically the skills are like passing, setting. They're working on the skills formation.
Yeah, oh, maybe it was this. No, it wasn't that. But I will just continue with that. The skills, the mental skills stuff all boil down to self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
And what people you guys just did it. Yeah, of course. But people don't understand necessarily what that really means all the time. Self-talk controls everything. And if you have self-talk, this is the little voice in my head. Well, that's either flavored pessimistically or optimistically.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll ask somebody, are you a pessimist or an optimist? I'm an optimist. Okay. Or they'll go, I'm a realist, which is really just a pessimist that doesn't want to admit they're a pessimist, right? So self-talk isn't just like what people superficially think, hey, go get them. It's the thing that tells you what to have for breakfast. It's the thing that tells you how to recover from a mistake. It's the thing that tells you to step up or to step back. And so through that mindfulness lens, my definition of mindfulness, not that I'm so great to have redefined it, but to make it simple enough for myself to understand, it's being aware of the present situation without assessing it as bad. Mm-hmm. And assessing it as bad comes from our self-talk. Mm-hmm. Oh, I served it out again. I suck. Or, there's a high percentage of people that serve it out sometimes.
Part of the game.
Right. So it's about conditioning self-talk that drives performance. And I sort of alluded to this earlier, building the structure for younger people. When you can manage your self-talk and it's optimistic and it drives you forward, you're not having negative emotional, psychological, and physical reactions to the voice in your head all the time. Increases performance, happiness, everything. Decreases anxiety.
So
which one of the which one of the 3 pillars that you're talking about, or the 3 circles that you pull from, do you find most prevalent at the collegiate level for athletes to work on? And how do they work on that?
It's always self-talk. Mm-hmm. But again, I want to add texture to that idea that it's not just rah, go get 'em stuff. It's most people do not know what they're telling themselves. I'll go, what's your self-talk? I want to give an example. There was a professional beach volleyball player. I had this conversation. Well, how's your self-talk? And she said, oh, it's so good. I'm like, let's go. We'll get them next time, when I make a mistake. Okay, great. And I went with her to a tournament, and the first mistake she made, F-bombs were flying. And I was like, that's not what you told me you say. So we're not really in tune with what we tell ourselves. And so the first thing that I want people to do is understand what that voice in their head actually is, because usually they don't know. And usually it's way more critical than they thought. And so for everybody, but in particularly collegiate, what if I get benched? What if my coach doesn't like me? What if I have to quit? What if this? What if that? You learn to change that, show up and see what happens. Go anyway. Hit over and in. You learn self-talk that drives you forward. All the other stuff goes away, which then that funnels right back into what I said about mindfulness. It's being present in the situation without assessing it as bad, because it's that negative assessment that affects us emotionally, psychologically, and physically.
So what would be your piece of advice to a collegiate athlete that might come to you and say, hey, coach, I'm in practice every day. I'm putting my best foot forward. I just don't think the coaching staff likes me. I've heard that a few times from athletes.
As have I. Yeah. So my advice would be to show up and see what happens. That's one of my mantras. If I'm like, I'm going to go to the Grit podcast. What if they don't like me? Well, show up and see what happens. So I try to teach people that. But if it's true, the coach doesn't like that person, what difference does it make? You show up and you have a process that I help you build, and you go implement the process. The rest of it is out of your control. Because what you're talking about is that self-talk where it goes, the coach doesn't like me, and that's awful. I call it awfulizing. That's that assessing is bad. Coach doesn't like me and it's awful. Well, now I'm responding to it's awful, right? And so I'm having a negative emotional, psychological, and physical response. So if you can change that to the coach doesn't like me, but I'm going to show up and let it rip. Now you're responding to that emotionally, psychologically, and physically. So, it goes a little deeper into the mental health side, what are our negative core beliefs and what have we learned through our families of origin, like I'm not good enough, stuff like that. We can always trace it back to that. But it doesn't even matter what the underlying psychology is. What matters is what you tell yourself now. So if you can condition yourself to tell yourself good things now, you will have that positive sort of affect. So it doesn't matter if your coach likes you or not, you show up and ball.
How long does it take in general for an athlete to take a skill to work on it, to embed it. Obviously, there's a cycle around as they age and the situations change. But let's say anywhere between middle school, high school, collegiate athletes sitting down with you, what's the timeline to build something to start?
That's 100% dependent on the individual. And it starts every time with their level of awareness of the situation. So awareness of what their self-talk is. Like I said, most people aren't.
And
So
do some people journal, like write it down and say, hey, this is what I'm working with?
So maybe I don't ever recommend journaling.
Okay.
I'm not against it, but I don't recommend it because a lot of people don't like to journal or write, and it's sort of a recipe for failure if they don't. Hey, why don't you go journal and think about it? Okay, and then they don't.
Right.
Like, I didn't journal. Sorry, coach. Through conversation, I can figure it out pretty quick what their themes are. You know, and there's I call them the big three negative core beliefs: unlovable, unworthy, or incompetent or helpless. There's no problem any of us ever has that doesn't boil down to the implication or the belief in ourselves of one of those. So just talking to a kid for a little while, my coach doesn't like me. Okay, so do you feel unlovable like other areas of your life? Well, now that you mention it. So maybe you'll notice that you seem to have this theme, which is you think people don't like you. Oh. Now there's a little glint of awareness, and they go off, you know, and they go, I thought about it a little bit, and they come back and I get a little more and a little more. So it might be 3 weeks, it might be 3 months. I don't know. Some people figure it out on the car ride home.
What about the other one I hear is usually at the collegiate level, more so, maybe high school, specifically for girls. I was on staff for Pepperdine men's volleyball. It was a different atmosphere in the gym. To each their own, of course, for both. We can dissect men and women sports teams. But what about the clickiness of maybe a team? Or if the upperclassmen are just like horrible to the underclassmen, like what would be your piece of advice in those scenarios? If a team, some programs gel, they're all happy family, but some programs aren't.
Yeah. My advice generally in that situation is for the person who feels left out or not part of it, is to find at least one person in the clique that they can start chipping away at, start becoming friends with. I don't know if you've heard, there's an actual phenomenon called outsider syndrome, where if we feel like an outsider, we send off this funky little signal that the group picks up and goes, ooh. It's like mirror neurons. We just unconsciously pick it up. We go, well, there's something funky going on. And then that group of people goes, well, there's something funky about that person. That person picks that up and they're like, ooh, they're sending me funky vibes. So they actually become an outsider. So I teach people that, and then I teach them skills to go approach the one person or two people that seem, you know, that they're willing to have a relationship and just chip away.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I find it really fascinating. So let's kind of uncover the pro side. And also I want to hear about supporting coaches and maybe a whole program. So let's go pro first. We'll go up the age group and then we'll kick over.
The pro thing is no less clicky, for sure. Do you mean to answer that question towards pros or just how sports psych applies to pros?
Just the evolution of maybe they have engaged with it before. Is it individual? Is it team focused? And the branches that it kind of grows into?
My experience generally with higher level athletes, pros, is that I can't think of one person that I could say had a great sports psychology experience. A legend of the game, multiple Olympic medals, told me in an irate way how she hated the sports psychologists she's been involved with because sports psychologists label you with stuff. Wow, that's one of the greatest to ever do her sport. So interesting. And another one, a legendary person who's still, both are still active actually, told me the same thing at a major university, that the sports psych there wasn't very good, and that professional would go tell the coach sort of the things that were talked about. So I get pros that have not had any experience or had a good experience. And this is how it works with them. Pros become pros because they're so good. They're at the best in their club or their team, whatever, growing through, and they work their way up, and they somehow get the fortitude and the resilience to do that. So you've got people that haven't trained mental skills. You've got all these really elite players that can show up and ball, but when things start to go a little bit south, they don't know why. They can't articulate what's going wrong or why their self-talk has changed or why that's happened. And so what I generally do is dissect that for them. Well, what were you saying? What happened? And we sort of reverse engineer into the gaps. Because showing up and letting a ball works about 80% of the time. And then the other 20, it's like scratching your head, like what's happening? And so, like I said, I reverse engineer the same skills that I bring the juniors. It's just a little harder because pros have been doing it so long at such a high level, they're neurologically grooved into the way they do things, which is the benefit of the younger kids. You're building that neurology for them. But the pros, they fight it a little bit, but once they take hold of it, it really clicks. You see a dramatic improvement.
Is there not a common theme, because again, everybody's different, but at the pro level, they are developed, right? They have their routines and how they think, but what generally is something that gets brought to your table that you like to work on with professional athletes?
Here's it's funny to play off what you said. You'd be surprised at how many pros come to me that don't have routines or can't articulate them. If you watched them, like we'll just stay in volleyball, if you watch somebody serve 50 times, you'd see them do it the same way, but they couldn't tell you that they were doing it. Like, what do you do? I don't know. What do you tell yourself? Oh, I'm not sure. And so if you don't even know what the structure is, when things start going south, it's really hard to kind of address what's wonky in there. And so that's where kind of the reverse engineering comes in. So probably one of the most common things that comes in from the pros is, I don't want to say slumps, but like they'll be like, I can't finish, or why can't I get past this level? And so we'll dissect it, and it always boils down to, because you don't understand the infrastructure of your greatest performances, and you don't understand the infrastructure of your worst performances, because there is one. I like to think of it like an old wooden roller coaster, all the boards. There's a structure underneath what goes right and what goes wrong. But if you don't know what they are, how can you kind of tweak? So I teach them or help them figure out what the structure is that they've already built.
I love that. I really actually love that. So let's look at a collegiate athlete.
We also have to talk about the books.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
For sure, because it's amazing. But let's look at the collegiate athlete over their 4 years in college, right? What is the engagement rate? And I know each university has different sports psychologists, but kind of what is the frequency and the healthy amount? Obviously, everyone's very, very different in their needs. But let's say on the average, how often are you engaging with sports psychology, mental training, and techniques?
This is how I prefer to do it. First session or two is a little bit extended, a couple hours, get to know each other. I try to listen to their negative core beliefs and hear all that stuff, and their bad habits and their good habits. And I teach them the structure of mindfulness and how it applies to sports psychology. And I maybe teach them the underlying roller coaster structure of a couple other things that maybe come up in the conversation. And I let them go off and put that into practice. Because like I mentioned about the pro who thought her self-talk was this, but it was really this. When you're in my office, you're not really accurately describing your experience, because when you're in an office on a couch and you're comfortable, it's not the same as when you're under pressure. And so you take what you learned, you go put it under pressure, and you go, oh, okay, what I thought I said, I don't say. What I thought I do, I don't really do. So then they come back in a couple weeks and we go, hey, what worked? What didn't? What was what you thought? What isn't what you thought? And we tweak that maybe for an hour or two, and then it just sort of goes. And then we kind of get into a maintenance thing for a while of maybe once a week, every other week, as they get better. Now, if it's with a pro, sometimes it's just like 1 or 2 sessions and they go off and travel or whatever. But for the juniors and the younger players, it's, every other weekish as needed. But once they get the structure and they figure out how to put it into play for themselves, they just come back every so often when some new thing is a little bigger than the structure they built.
Let's dive into the books.
Okay.
Okay. It's all you.
Okay.
I'm gonna hand it to you.
Okay.
We talked off camera that it's kind of like it's a workshop book. And it is so cool, you guys. Do you want me to say it? Do I say
Spoiler.
it for you? I'm just like, I'm so excited about it. It's so cool.
Say it for me, please.
Okay, so you get this book with you and your partner on the beach.
Right.
And you go through, and it's personality tests. And what other tests are in there?
Love languages.
Love languages?
Yes.
See, this is so fun. And then you know who your partner is before you start playing.
100%. So this is what I noticed working in pro beach volleyball. This is called the Pillars program, Beach Volleyball Partner Integration System. And I wrote it with Gina Urango, who is a legend. First ever beach volleyball scholarship.
You got it.
She's amazing. And
Woman of Troy, USC.
I've worked with her for a few years, and when she would have new partners or whatever, I would kind of see what was not working great. And so it occurred to me that a new partnership would form, and everything's, lovey-dovey and like, we're great, we can't wait. First tournament happens, real pressure happens, and there'll be a little dust up, a little inconsistencies. And I would help whoever the players were figure those out. Okay, great. We're ready for the next one. Well, then some new thing would pop up, and it would be the same thing over and over again. And so I figured out what the common themes were and sort of tailored that book to them with Gina's help. So I wrote it, would send her stuff and go, what do you think? And she would generally give me a much better perception that I could have ever had about it. So we got it into what it is. And then we had 2 round tables, and I'm going to read the names so I don't forget them. The first one was April Ross, Eric Baranek, Emily Day, Kyle Friend, and Julia Scholes sat down with us and went through the whole book. And they gave us insight even Gina hadn't thought of, so the book was sort of rewritten. And then we got that to a good spot, and we invited Kelly Reeves, pro AVP, also UCLA, Benny White from LMU, Katie Dickens. I don't want to leave anybody out. I think that's it. We had them come in, also put it through its paces and kind of hone it down. So theoretically, if you do this book with your partner or even for yourself, because like I said, we don't know ourselves very well. You can go, okay, I'm this, and these are my preferences. There's a lot of stuff about personality preferences. I don't know if you've ever heard of the big 5 personality traits. But this will tell you what yours are. And like, maybe you're super clean and this other person's super messy, and you're going to be on the road internationally, it's going to be a problem. So you can have those conversations before they're a big deal. And theoretically, you hit the ground running. And it also covers communication with partners, because we're also not inherently very good communicators. So it covers communication styles.
In a sport that has to talk at your point.
Yeah.
Especially on beach.
Yeah. And the thing is, most people are passive communicators until they're angry. Then they become passive aggressive communicators, which I've seen a lot in beach volleyball. So if you can sort of upfront both have agreed upon communication style, that's why it's called the pillars. There's these pillars. Communication is one. So my thought was, if you have these pillars, they're like a North Star for these serious parts of your partnership. If we agree to communicate this way, if we agree to this, we agree to that, all actions and all the processes feed that, not your ego, not your annoyances. So if something goes wonky while you're playing, did you break down communication? Yeah, here's where we went wrong. Let's fix that. And everything cooks along full steam.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about book number 2.
Okay.
And this is Mindfulness and the Mental Game. So I'm going to hand that to you to flick through.
Yeah, I don't. This
Both
one,
of them are on Amazon, so if you want to check them out, you can order them for yourselves.
This one I don't really need to flip through, because I'm not going to leave anybody's name out. It was just me. Like I mentioned earlier about mindfulness, I was working in drug and alcohol rehab, and really got a hold of this mindfulness idea. And I realized how all high performance happens in the present moment. You go, no, because I practiced it. Yeah, but in practice, you were in that moment. But it is against our human brain's wiring to be present. So this is where mindfulness plays in. Our our mind is programmed to like scan the savannah for threats. So it time travels to the past and it finds threats. Oh man, last time we played that team, they killed us. So you're not really present. You're in the past and you're dragging those bad feelings back with you to the present. Or you go, oh no, we're playing them tomorrow. Now you're time traveling to the future, dragging those bad feelings back to the present. That's what sits underneath anxiety. On a clinical level, when we time travel to the past a lot and live and ruminate there, that's what sits under depression. But that's not as big of a deal in sports. But it definitely, if you're thinking about how the team whooped you yesterday or how they're going to whoop you tomorrow, you're not doing very well today. So the whole point of this is to teach people to stay present, to stay in their process, to not be time traveling, because greatness doesn't happen in the past or the future, it happens now. So the more we can be now, the better we can do.
I'm going to have to advocate for coaches.
Oh,
what's the relationship with sports psych and coaches and coaching, and what's shared, what's not? What's kind of the truth there?
It's very bipolar. There are coaches like yourself who are like, let's go. And then there are coaches who are, I don't need that. That's just crazy. I don't have a problem. My team doesn't have problems. Major university, I was at a meeting. They had purchased, I was a contractor for a company they had purchased services from. 30 coaches in there, very well-funded place. 30 coaches. I gave a presentation, about the benefits of it. Really zero interest from those coaches. One was an ex-major leaguer. I was in the major leagues. A team doesn't need sports psychs. Oh, okay. So it's either hostility or welcome, and there's not much in between. Some people will tolerate it, but what I find is those coaches that don't have an open mind about it are more old school, although they're not always old, but they're still old school. There's a culture there where probably wouldn't help, because it's like sink or swim. And those sink or swim athletes that get recruited or that wind up there often break down, but they have figured out the fortitude, the thing that they need to be able to endure that, but they are often just enduring. They're not enjoying. But then there's the coaches who are really into whatever novel thing helps make their players better, and you see that reflected in the culture too. So it's kind of like, well, I'd rather go with the coach who sees the benefit or is willing to give it a try than the one who's going to fight it, because, what's the point? So, man, that's
fair.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Anything that we didn't touch on that's in the back of your mind, front of your mind, that little takeaway for anybody watching?
Beach specific with partnerships or
Yeah, here's my
or travel, road dog life, all that fun stuff.
Well, the road
sure we
dog
could talk
life.
For hours.
You need this for sure. This is if you were to walk down Hermosa Beach right now, and you would tell my players, or you're at a tournament, you could tell my pro players by them digging their toes in the sand when they serve primarily. Because, I talk a lot in the book, and I was speaking about mindfulness, is about being present. The quickest way to become present is to check in on your senses. And, I could run you through an exercise here. How do you know you're sitting on that couch? And people go, because it's soft. Yeah, but that's an assessment. It's not proof you're here. It'll still be soft later. Proof is you feel pressure on your butt, right? The proof you're in this room is you see me, you hear me, the temperature of the room. But on a volleyball court or on the beach, there's not too many things that are constant, but the sand is constant. So if you can be in the sensation, well, y'all do it. Wiggle your toes right now. If you're in this, it's kind of a funny sensation, right? Like it's hard to even describe what it is. If you're figuring out what that sensation is, you cannot be mentally anywhere else, because your mind can't do two things at once. So for me, a great reset and a great start of a routine is those toes in the sand. If you're in that experience, it's warm, it's cold, the sand's deep, it's shallow. You're not in the past or the future. So my takeaway is, even if you're driving in your car and you're anxious, wiggle your toes, feel your butt in the chair, and you will be present. The real trick is 2 seconds later, you go right back to whatever's stressing you out.
Yeah.
You just have to bring it right back. And you may have to do it 100 times today, but it'll only be 90 tomorrow, 80, 70, and then you'll be present most of the time.
Love it. Love it.
It's a great takeaway.
Yes. And you're in San Antonio?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm here at least once a month. I do have an office here in Hermosa.
Hermosa.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And if somebody would like to get a hold of you, either a parent or an athlete, easiest way?
MindRightSportsPsychology.com would probably be the easiest way. There's all my contact info. Instagram, we have a link on there. My Instagram has tons of videos of me kind of doing my thing that are taken from actual interviews or sessions with pros. But it's just me talking, but it's all the little tidbits that I've talked about here so they can get a good feel for what's going on there.
Awesome.
Perfect. And we'll put it in the bio here for this episode. Well, thank you for joining us.
That was great.
Yeah. Make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this episode. And we will see you next time on Grit inside Manhattan Beach Studios, brought to you by Skyball. Keep it gritty out there.
Make up.